Hello, welcome back, and yes, you're welcome for the Marvin Gaye theme song. Anyway, we're back. We're back. It's been a good week. How many executive orders signed?
Good grief, I don't know. A lot.
One of the most important ones was the DEI.
Yes.
That needed to go. That needed to go because actually, that was really. I mean, I titled this the last hope or the last holdout of racism. That's all that was. It was modern day racism, once again used by the left. They've always got to create. They got to do two things. They've got to create division, and they've got to create victims and people that need them. And
by doing so, they create an environment of competition, of strife, and instead of uniting people, it just drives a wedge.
Yes, and the headline that I come across, it says Trump administration orders federal employees in DEI offices to be placed on paid leave as agencies wind down diversity initiatives. Of course, this has a lot of people on the left just losing their mind. It says the Trump administration on Tuesday ordered all federal employees working on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives to be placed on paid leave as government agencies work to shutter DEI offices. The Office of Personnel Management, the government's top human resource agencies, informed federal department heads in a memo that DEI program employees must be notified by 5 p.m. Wednesday that their administrative leave is effective immediately. The memo further directs federal agencies to take down all outward-facing media, such as web pages and social media accounts focused on DEI programs, cancel all employee diversity trainings, and terminate any DEI-related contracts by the same deadline. OPM also told agency heads to ask employees if they know of any efforts to disguise DEI programs with coded, imprecise language to report back their findings on attempts to obfuscate the initiatives by January 31. So, basically, DEI is why I left Amazon. Because I used to work for Amazon several years ago, and they weren't calling it that, but it was apparent that's what it was. And that's all the DEI did, is it took away any initiative for people to want to do well for a company. And once you realized that the battle uphill was far harder than even the reward at the top of the hill, you just quit.
Yeah. Well, anything that is based on race is itself racist.
Yes.
Like, I agree that it should be a merit-based system. If you're the best, you're the best. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, male, female. That's irrelevant. You need to be the best for that job. And by doing what they were doing, they were, in fact, lowering the standard. And then, creating an environment of hatred, because then you have people who feel resentful because they don't get opportunities, even if they are the best candidate.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh,
You're right. It has creeped its way into even the church. And this has been really one of the biggest problems I've had with it, is that culture grows around the church. The church doesn't grow around the culture. And I'm not intimidated. I'm not scared by somebody who's getting an opportunity to do better. I mean, anybody listening to this, I want you to understand that. But at the same time, you need to be where you are. You need to get your promotions based on your merit. Or else, the holiday we just celebrated this past Monday, Martin Luther King, his, dream of people being judged by the content of character rather than the color of their skin means nothing.
Exactly. And like I said, you end up having people in positions where they are not efficient or trained. And then you have issues like what they had in Pennsylvania, where Trump was shot because of a bunch of failures. It promotes that kind of atmosphere by giving someone a job simply based on who they are, not what they can provide.
Right.
It's completely counterintuitive. It creates a substandard performance because you're grading on something that is artificial, not on the actual skill sets or intelligence or any of the other things that are required for those positions.
So, other things that he did too was, one, if you listen to his inauguration speech, he said that he was going to restore with full benefits all of the military personnel who were let go due to not taking the COVID vaccine.
With back pay.
With back pay. And so that's huge. He's also signed to move to end the birthright citizenship. He is, of course, obviously declaring the migrant crossing along the U.S. border a national emergency.
The cartels.
That was the next one I was getting ready to get to. This one's big. He's going to say that the cartels are a terrorist organization.
Yeah. Well, because like Tom Homan said, the criminal cartels with their fentanyl have killed, 100,000 Americans?
Yeah.
And, that's more than any terrorist act. In fact, that's more than all the terrorist acts put together. So, I mean, they're not wrong. They bring nothing but death and destruction.
Right. Well, and that puts special forces, special operations forces operating in places that, not to declare war on anybody in South America, but definitely to something has to be done about the cartels, because what was that, a couple of years ago when the cartels were forcing all of the what is it you use to make guacamole with?
Avocados.
The avocado farmers to go on strike.
Why?
It was I could be wrong, but it seems like that was something that was going on a couple of years ago. And so, I mean, that if I am correct on that, if my memory does serve me well on that, when you do something like that, you're declaring war on the nation that you're telling the farmers that provide for that nation. You're declaring war on them when you tell them you have to go on strike and no longer do this.
Yeah. Well, let's also not forget, some of the ways they smuggle drugs into the country, inside bodies, kidnapping people, killing them, and using them as mules. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at the violence that goes along with the cartels, the beheadings. It's grotesque.
Yeah.
I agree something needed to be done. This is by far the most extreme step our country has ever made. But when you have, 100,000 people dying, something has to change.
It does. And I think we've made a good step in that direction. And I thought it was I thought it was actually brilliant the way that he called out the former administration in his inaugural speech. He didn't wait till another speech. He did it right there with them sitting there, because he had a much broader audience, even around the world.
Yeah. Well, there were so many good things that have come out, even in the first couple days. But, kind of unrelated, but something I'm really excited to see is he signed an executive order to release the JFK files.
Yeah.
RFK and MLK.
Yeah.
All of them, will be declassified. So you're about to see how corrupt our government really is.
It's much like the cabal in the Blacklist.
Yeah. Well, you're about to get a firsthand view, because based on people that have viewed the JFK files, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. The CIA was directly involved in his assassination. So you're about to see how much the government was intertwined with all these high power political figures getting assassinated.
You know, that are they just going to dump those? Like, is that going to be something on X?
I don't know how they'll do it, but the thing is, like, MLK, Martin Luther King's file was supposed to be declassified.
So we're going to find out it wasn't a redneck good old boy who shot him.
Oh, probably not. It was supposed to be declassified, but then they resealed it. You know, like they have put such time constraints on these, like, 75 or 100 years later. Well, obviously no one involved will be around. I think what they're afraid of is you will see the levels of corruption
exposed.
Especially within, like, the CIA.
Yeah.
That's what they're worried about.
Well, and that needs to be, and that was never, ever supposed to be hidden from the American people.
No.
And that has been my problem with all of the creations and the expansions of these federal department heads and really federal law enforcement. When I say law enforcement, I'm not against law enforcement. I don't like federal law enforcement because of this reason. What starts out as a supposed good idea ends up becoming very corrupt because it's never retracted when what made it necessary goes away.
Well, and the other thing we've seen time and time again is the weaponization of those organizations. If they stayed true, so I've always said this, it should be equal dispensation of the law, regardless of who you are or your political affiliation. You face the same consequence, but they have totally usurped that. It is 100% weaponized.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest issue. If they took the law and enforced the law regardless of who was being charged, then it might not be as big of an issue. But, when you're only going after one side of the aisle with vitriol and hatred, there's an issue. And so I really think they need to downsize or do away with a lot of, especially the federal law enforcement, especially agencies like the ATF, where, they write a letter and that becomes de facto law. Like that needs to stop.
Yeah. And it has got to stop. And I think we're going to find that it was not a good old boy who shot MLK, and it was not a communist-loving Cuban descendant who shot JFK. I think that's what they want to hide most of.
Well, Lee Harvey Oswald, originally they said that he had never had contact with the CIA, but out of the documents that have been released, he 100% had contact with them, which is why he was allowed to go to Russia as essentially as a defector and was allowed to come back. He was acting on behalf of the CIA.
Which begs the question, why does the intelligence community, is this kind of like, you remember the barrack sergeants in the Roman Empire? You know who I'm talking about, where they were the one who decided when it was time for a Caesar to go?
Yeah.
Is that really what they've become?
I think so, and I think that's one of the reasons that the JFK files hadn't been released.
Yeah.
is because that was going to become clear that there are elements within the government that decide who stays. I mean, they do it in foreign countries all the time.
Yeah.
They
Why
start
not at
doing
home?
it. Yeah. Therein lies the problem. We talked about this before, but it's like it's a God complex.
Mm-hmm.
You can make or break an entire country. They wield that power sometimes for their own benefit.
Well, what was I mean, think about when JFK commissioned the first wave of Green Berets. What is the Green Berets' job? It's really to go into countries, set up coups, and overturn governments without even getting involved, so that nobody ever knows America's there. So when you've got the CIA that does it on a much broader, broader landscape, if you will. I mean, once a president like Trump starts messing with the intelligence community, and most people say that's the reason that they did to George W. Bush what they did to him, was because he had upset the intelligence community.
Well, look at Nixon.
Yeah.
Nixon was set up by the CIA.
Yeah.
Which the whole thing with Watergate, he had no idea what was going on. But if you look at everyone that broke into the Watergate Hotel, they were either former CIA or had connections to the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
They were using CIA equipment. Like, they toppled a sitting president simply because they didn't like what he was doing. I think you'll find that that's a quite common theme throughout latter American history.
Yeah.
Because if you start looking at it, for sure, JFK, Nixon, Bush, like, you anger them and they will find a way to get back to you or get back at you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's all.
I love what James Wood says, the actor James Wood. He says, let's face it, Donald Trump is a rough individual. He is vain, insensitive, and raw, but he loves America more than any president in my lifetime. And I think that's what a lot of people don't. Trump almost has this Elliot Ness vibe about him. He's here to clean up the town. And I think, with him doing all these, declassifications, which are on things that should have been declassified years ago. And then Bush signed the Freedom of Information Act, and you still couldn't get access to that.
Yeah, well, and like I said, they set these arbitrary dates, like, we'll release them in 75 years. And then that comes up and they push it off.
Yeah, because they think everyone's going to be dead.
Yeah.
That would remember it.
And to an extent, the people involved would likely be gone. But, that's why I said I don't think it's to protect any individuals.
No.
I think it is because you will see the inner workings of the darkest reaches of the federal government.
Yeah.
And that is what they want to hide. They don't want you to know how corrupt the system really is and how much reach these shadowy figures have.
Mm-hmm.
That is because our illusion of how our country operates will be shattered. I think that's what they're afraid of.
Well, I mean, right here in the state of Arkansas, Arkansas was a CIA that was controlled by the CIA, and it was where the Iran Contra affair, that was kind of like their main hub, and it was likely that presidents didn't know about it, but the CIA did, and that's the reason why that what was his name? The guy that Tom Cruise played him, but I can't think of his name. Barry Seal. He was running that, and then once he turned on the CIA, it was a cartel came up right out of Mexico, and so they say.
Yeah.
And found him at a mission in Louisiana that the CIA had placed him in for his own protection, and he just winds up dead.
Yeah. Well, they have particularly nefarious ways of tying up loose ends.
Yes.
But none of this stuff happens by chance.
No.
Like someone is orchestrating it all. And once you find that, the president and Congress and all these people don't wield the power, it's actually shadow organizations within the government. I think that would fundamentally break a lot of people and their faith in the country, which is what, we deserve to know. The way this country was founded, we are to have the power, not the government. If it worked like it was intended, they worked for us, not the reverse. And so I think it would upset the balance. But, we'll find out soon. I don't know, now that he has signed for them to be released, I don't know what the time frame is on that. Like, I don't know if they have a specific amount of time.
Knowing Trump, it'll be like immediately.
Well, I hope so.
Well, I was reading out, look at Micah 7:3. It says that they may successfully do evil with both hands. The prince asks for gifts. The judge seeks a bribe. And the great man utters his evil desire. So they scheme together. Right there, God is putting all three sectors. He's putting the government, the judicial, and the executive all together right there. Because what he's saying is that all this cannot happen in a vacuum. And all these people are moving off of one thing, money.
Oh, yeah.
The love of money is the root of all evil. And when you just follow the money, as they say, it's going to lead you to the people that are behind orchestrating this stuff. And that's what they're scared of.
Well, and if you look at politicians, going in with a net worth of several $1 million and coming out of office, with a net worth like Obama, I think it was $22 million. Right. When he left office. How? If you only make $400,000 a year, where'd all the money come from?
Yeah.
Come on. Our system it's corrupt. There's a lot of money moving around. But as the Bible says, ill-gotten gains profiteth no man.
Yeah.
Eventually you may benefit in the short term, but you will suffer in the long term.
Yeah.
There's so much corruption. And if you look at the amount of money our government throws around that it doesn't even have.
No, it's coming from us.
Yeah. Well, and I cannot fathom that we could have people in this country who lose everything, whether it's due to a hurricane or a fire, and we slap them in the face by giving them less than not even $1,000, but we're sending millions and millions of dollars around the world.
Yeah.
It's just like when they said we couldn't build the border wall because it cost $5 billion.
Yeah.
And then you see them spending billions of dollars on other ridiculous stuff.
That was the other thing. Did you see how many? Before he even takes Iran, before he even takes the oath, it was just like Ronald Reagan. They released those hostages.
Yeah.
And was it Israel and Hamas? They called a ceasefire immediately.
They know what's coming.
Yeah.
Because, people don't like Trump because he's rough or he's not a slick talker like a lot of these career politicians.
Yeah.
But the difference is he gets stuff done. Just like when they met with the Taliban and he said, look, I want out. I don't want to stay here. But, I want to do it, the correct way. and he takes that picture out of his pocket and hands it to the. Actually, I guess I'm getting it out of sequence. He said, "I want to get out, but I don't want any more bloodshed. And if you harm a single hair on an American, I'll kill you." To the head of the Taliban. He takes the picture out of his jacket and hands it to him, and it's a picture of his house, a satellite image.
Yeah.
But, for 18 months, there wasn't a single casualty. Right. He gets stuff done.
Yeah.
Like, you need someone who can play tough.
Yeah.
Not a senile old man and a woman who
cackled.
Yeah. Literally, they were inept at dealing with the other superpowers of the world.
Well, that's what he said in his inaugural. He pointed out every administration that was sitting there that day. It was Clinton and Bush, and he just said, look, he said all these problems that we're dealing with, and I'm paraphrasing, all these problems we're dealing with because just a lack of common sense.
Well, and being weak, why are we paying a majority of the bills for NATO? Trump said, look, if you want to be part of this, then you're going to have to pay your part. We're across the ocean. Likely, if a war broke out in Europe, it wouldn't directly affect us. You need us, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So you're going to pay your fair share or we'll pull out. And guess what? Then they do.
He did pull out of NATO, though, right?
Well, he threatened to.
He should.
Yeah. Well, I understand.
What country's going to go to war without the United States backing them? A nuclear war.
Well,
if you really want to stop nuclear war,
yeah.
Who's going to do that?
Yeah. We are the most powerful nation. We carry the biggest stick, so to speak.
And I know their argument would be, well, you're still going to have countries like China and Russia. Well, but okay. But they know that the United States will retaliate.
Well, it all goes back to that mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
They know, the whole world knows that when a nuke is fired off, someone will retaliate. There is no winner in a nuclear war. And the problem is you had people in the previous administration that thought you could. They were going, well, we could come out on top. Regardless, everyone loses. There is no winner.
No.
But yeah, there are fail-safes in place, like Russia has the dead man's hand. Even if no one is left alive, their nukes will fire, even if there's no one left to give the command. Once they get hit, they'll all launch. It's a terrible scenario.
That's to ensure that there's no assassination attempts by the CIA.
Yeah.
That's really what that is. Because you start deciding you're just going to start killing people, you're going to go, well, no, we're not going to do that because there'll be a message sent, and then it's
all over.
Yeah.
And, with hypersonic missiles now and the sheer numbers and the fact that you can have these warheads that break apart and you can hit, 20, 30 separate cities.
Yeah.
You can't stop them.
No.
There's no way to stop all of that. And so, regardless, there will be no winner.
No. That's why, Putin had said that the next world war would be fought with ones and zeros. Because that actually would have more devastating effects than nuclear bombs if you had cybersecurity attacks going on all over the world. And you could have some nuclear bombs maybe set off due to that. But if you cripple a society, you will assure the destruction of that society without destroying everything to the point that you at some point could rebuild.
Yeah. Well, look at like with Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
Look at how fast things went into utter chaos,
Yeah.
murder. Like, it won't take long for a society to crumble.
Right.
And once you take away the ability for people to eat or commute, you'll see them turn on each other rather quickly. And, that's all you need to do, because at that point, that society is crippled without using any form of external weaponry. If someone crippled the stock market, our country would, be in seriously bad shape.
Yeah. And that's, what it does too, like you said, I mean, it assures, because it shows you that as crazy as many of those people are, they don't want to die themselves.
Well, and they understand that even if they perceived a victory, it would be so short-lived.
Yeah.
Because it would mean the annihilation of essentially everyone.
Yeah.
Like there is no winning.
No.
And they realize that, which is why, like what they were inching towards, by firing American missiles and British missiles into Russia, we were flirting with that, because eventually the kinds of missiles like the ATACMS or the British, what are they, Storm Shadow, all of those are nuclear capable. So when you're firing them deep into Russia, at some point they have to wonder, obviously they've all been conventional, but the chance is one of them could be carrying a nuclear warhead.
So how does I know what it means. How does the mutually assured destruction work?
Basically, if the way it worked, like for us, if we detected a nuclear launch, then we would retaliate by launching nukes. And once the Russians detected nukes, they would send, like, everybody just sending enough to wipe the other off the face of the earth. And so, I mean, once the Russians did almost send a nuke one time because their radar caught a flock of geese and they thought we had fired a missile. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I have heard about this, yes.
And then we were communicating with them saying, no, we didn't. But they were preparing to launch. Had they done so, then we would have, once a launch is detected, then the receiving country will launch, and then it's just...
So it's not a thing where, obviously, you're not going to share military secrets, but it's not a thing where you kind of have to have an open book policy with your enemy.
I think it's just a mutual understanding that if this happens, we're all done for.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest thing that has kept it from actually occurring. It's just that.
But do you think it's really that they have any kind of care for the people? I kind of don't think they do.
I don't know. I would say Putin is very nationalistic. I think that deep down
he cares about the Russian people.
He cares about the Russian people.
Which is what the argument has been. Because the one, when people try to say, well, Trump is a Russian operative, and I've heard people say, well, but the point is that Putin is a nationalist, Trump is a nationalist. They're nationalists for different reasons, but they're both still in love with the native country.
With their country, yes. I would be more concerned with someone like the North Koreans because they, in my opinion, tend to, it's more of a display of power more than a love of their own country.
Yeah.
I would sooner say someone like the North Koreans would cause a nuclear war because they don't value their people the same way. That's just my assessment.
So you don't think that the Koreans have a love of country? The North Koreans?
Not the way these others do.
What's at stake for them then?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know what has kept it from actually occurring. But, like things had gotten so bad in North Korea that they were eating grass and their pets. And like if you look at them, look at nighttime images of North Korea, only the capital is lit. There's no electricity at night. Like the country, I don't know. I just feel like the upper echelon there, or the ruling family, is so self-consumed that they don't have that same love for their
Then
fellow.
I wonder if it is a thing where the Chinese government tells them, maybe the Chinese government has their eye on it.
Or keeps them in check.
Yeah.
I mean, that's possible. We know that they're working with the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the same thing. They may all go, like keep it to a dull roar.
Yeah.
Because I think China and Russia, both being in fairly close proximity, would feel the effect.
Does North Korea have a nuke yet?
I don't know. I want to say yes, but I could be.
They've got the nuke capability. But I can't remember if
I
they
know
got
they
the
were
ability to launch it.
They do, because I don't know if you remember a while back they were testing their ICBMs, and they now have some that I believe would be capable of hitting, like our West Coast. I think. I'm fairly certain they do.
Someone then is keeping their thumb down on him. I mean, if if what you say is true, and there's absolutely zero national interest for him, somebody somewhere is keeping a close eye on what he's doing.
And I think a lot of the North Koreans, how they have to have pictures of, what's his name? Kim
Jong-un?
Yeah. They basically worship his image.
Yeah.
Because if they're not doing that, then, they face execution. I don't think there's a true love for him. It's more they're beaten into submission and know that if they don't play along, they'll end up dead and their whole family will.
It's amazing how that country even survives.
Honestly, yes. I don't know.
Because by this point, most countries have already had a coup. Of course, I get you can point to Cuba. Cuba's about as bad as they are.
Yeah. Well, and Fidel Castro ruled for how long?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, you go back to the even the Declaration of Independence. One of the things that Jefferson talks about there is that, of course, paraphrasing, but after a certain amount of time, people just kind of accept it that this is what it is, and this is the way it is, and that's why that our founders set us up the way we did, was so that the American people, and we saw it this last month or a couple of months ago. and why Trump was elected. I mean, I had someone yesterday and they posted something about, they wanted you to go like their page, and if you hated Trump, like the page. If you didn't like the page, then you were a Trumpy. And I happen to know this person is just in love with TikTok. And I'm like, you are aware you're getting to enjoy TikTok right now because of him.
Yeah.
Because had she went back into office, TikTok would have been gone. It was gone. And you happen to be a server at a restaurant, which means that your tips are now no longer going to be taxed. So I'm not sure why you hate the guy.
Yeah. I mean, it seems so counterintuitive. He could literally cure cancer, and there'd be people who'd be angry.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that he can catch a break amongst certain groups. The Trump derangement syndrome it's a real thing.
It's righteousness, really, is what it is. And I'm not saying he's righteous per se, because, but when righteousness is doing what righteousness does, people that are against it have to find fault with it. I mean, we see that with Jesus. I mean, the perfect man walked the earth, and they crucified him. When a person is doing good, there's something about when human nature has reached a very base level, it wants to see people suffer. And I think that's where a godlike complex comes in, not because that God wants that, but people feel morally superior when they know that other people are suffering, but they aren't.
Yeah, I mean, that's why franchises, I'm not going to repeat the name. It's another name for a donkey. That series of movies were so popular. People like to see other people get hurt.
Yes.
Like, there's some morbid fascination with knowing that someone else is getting hurt, and we find humor in it.
Yeah.
As a species, I mean, how dark is that?
Well, I mean, that's like the videos that are on YouTube called Fell Army. That's all it is just people hurting themselves.
Well, and the Darwin Awards.
Yeah, I forgot about those.
Like we revel in the misfortune of others. It's really a sad state of affairs.
Well, not to cut you off, but let's think about when American Idol was on. And you'd get all those people coming across there, couldn't sing, couldn't do anything.
And people enjoyed that more than the actual.
Yeah, once that part was over, a lot of people quit watching.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that a lot of people find comfort in knowing that they feel, like you said, superior, or for a moment they feel less vulnerable.
Yeah.
They look at someone else and go, wow, like, at least I don't feel like that.
Yeah.
And to some extent, I could understand that, but getting enjoyment or pleasure out of the pain of others is not a good human trait. It's really...
it is. It can be funny, if the person's not hurt bad. But you're right. It's, just to sit and take in and just ingest that, it's not good.
No. And, we often talk about the dehumanization, and that's one of the easiest ways to look at someone as less than human.
Yeah.
Is getting pleasure from them being upset emotionally or hurt physically. It's a very slippery slope.
Yeah, you're right. And it's comedy. I was actually having this conversation earlier this week. It was me and someone I work with. She's a black lady, and there was something playing, a comedy that was playing, and it was a black comedy, and I got cracked up because I think Chris Rock does the narration. I think is what it was, and he says the difference between a black neighborhood and a white neighborhood is, he said, the black kids will beat you up and rob you. The white kids will just beat you up. And I got cracked up at that. And the woman, she said, I guess comedy's just meant to be socially offensive. I said, of course it is. You go back to the Jeffersons, you go back to All in the Family. Those shows were deliberately written the way they were to make fun of racism, and it was successful. So in that regard, it can do the job it was meant to do. But if we go back to the Bible, the persecution of Christians started when they were mocking the Christians. They were making fun of them.
Yeah. And it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
Like I said, once you dehumanize a population or a religious group, it becomes far easier. I mean, look at World War II. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the Germans did it with the Jews and gypsies, but the Americans did it too. Yeah. Look at the cartoons of the Japanese.
That's right.
Humans will take that, and like I said, it becomes much easier to do horrific things when you don't think about it being another human.
Yeah.
And that's why I said it's a slippery slope, because once you start down it, it's very hard to reverse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, we're still dealing with some of those ideologies today, which have been around for, essentially as long as humans have been around. Yeah. But it's just not something you should knowingly entertain. But, I started thinking about, like, Home Alone. The whole thing is him hurting the burglars. Now, do I think you should defend your home? Yes. But the reality of what he's doing, like throwing a paint can down a flight of stairs and hitting someone in the head, or the iron falling.
Well, you go back to the Three Stooges, right?
It'd kill you.
We laughed at Moe slapping the other two guys.
Yeah. Or poking each other in the eyes.
Yeah. And I think there is something there to be said. Obviously, it's not a good human trait for, at all. But I think too, there's also something there to be said, because, I think humans have almost a self, what's the word I'm looking for? Where we beat up ourselves too.
Self-destruction.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not saying it's a sin to watch any of that. I don't believe that. I don't believe that's a sin. It's comedy. It's kept within the pretext of comedy. But like you said, with Home Alone, it really is. It's a lot of him just defending his home, and you're kind of seeing it through the eyes of a kid who would do something like that, because the thought of killing someone at that age would probably not enter their mind.
Maybe now.
Maybe now.
Not in the 90s.
No. And, but you're right. There is a certain amount of dark to that.
Well, that's why websites like Faces of Death and other...
are those real? You bring that up. I've always heard that those are actually, those are stuntmen who have staged those deaths.
No, there's a lot of, with very little effort, you can find videos of ISIS beheading people or setting them on fire.
You can, yes. Uh-huh.
That kind of content is out there. And the sad thing is there's a large market for it. Mm-hmm. People
Well,
who don't
I mean,
even...
we don't have a lot of them in this country, but in other countries they've got the snuff videos, which I know I'm sure you know what those are. And what happens there is you've got people that are, they're young, and in this country, one of the good things we've got is we've got talent agencies that can kind of skirt you around that. But in other countries, they don't have that. So they go and they get mixed up with somebody. They don't know who they're getting mixed up with.
No.
And then you're right. It makes it onto the web, because that is one of the things I think the FBI, I think they've got an entire department that investigates that stuff.
Hopefully.
I think they investigate like snuff videos and videos like you're talking about, because they do make it on the web. And that is the downside to not having any regulation on the web. Although the other downsides to having regulation on the web is a lot worse.
Yeah. Well, it's those that would give up, what is it?
Freedom for security?
Yes, deserve neither.
Yeah.
Like,
I think you need your head tested if you like that stuff and want to watch it.
yeah. I mean, it's grotesque.
Yeah.
And anyone who has experienced real life death and situations like that, they want no part of it.
That's right. That's right.
It's a darker, curious part of a lot of people's minds.
Well, the Bible tells us not to have anything to do with those that do want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
It said not only are those worthy of death who find pleasure in them, but those who condone them.
Well, because you will get sucked in.
Yeah.
There are certain things you if you're around it enough, you will become compromised, and that's the danger. It's better to just avoid it than to try to. It's just like drugs. It's better to avoid doing cocaine than to get addicted and try to quit.
Okay, so here's the verse that I was looking for. We read it last week. It says, though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them.
Yeah, we nailed it. There are a great many things that you truly don't want to experience. Right. And I think that a lot of those people are trying to live vicariously through media. But if you've smelled the smell and you've seen what other human beings can actually do to each other, you don't want, it's not a place you want to stay.
Well, I was actually we were having this conversation, me, Chandler, and Chris, we were actually having that conversation just last weekend, I've heard World War II soldiers, people would ask, what was it like? Or Korean soldiers, or Vietnam soldiers. I actually heard a Vietnam soldier tell someone, why would I talk to you about it? You weren't there. And that is kind of the essence of it. And it is easy, especially for people in American society, to kind of live in this bubble, because we haven't, thank God, we've not seen a war on this soil in over 100 years. 150 some years. I mean, we've seen some pockets of violence, but not war. And most people can kind of live in that. But you take other places that are in these war-torn countries, it's easy for these guys to go over there and just more or less be predators.
Yeah, well, and you go to countries where they've got 10-year-old kids holding AKs.
Yeah.
Like, it's a way of life.
Yeah.
But, like, if you're an inner city cop, I would say that a lot of what they deal with is tantamount. It is combat.
Yeah.
Because you're going out and you're not knowing if someone's going to try to kill you.
Right.
You see, use Little Rock, on the worst years, they would have, 90-some homicides.
Mm-hmm.
But how many people were shot and didn't die, or were stabbed, or were beaten? It's, I'm sure, very similar, if not, a very close approximation. The agency where I used to work, a couple weeks ago had an officer-involved shooting. But like I said, those that live it don't want to relive it.
Right.
Like, there are things that I wish I could forget, especially like with deceased children. Like, I for a long time had a hard time dealing with that. I had to go on a 2-year-old who had died, and for weeks I would get up in the middle of the night and go check on my kids. And my wife's like, "You have to stop," but I just kept seeing that over and over.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said I think a lot of the people that get hung up on that stuff have never truly experienced it, because if they had, they wouldn't want it.
No, I remember, because my dad's a Vietnam veteran, and I remember this. There was this guy, worked with him, and he claimed that he had been a Navy SEAL in Vietnam. And I mean, just coming up with all kinds of stories. And I was talking to my dad. My dad said he's never seen anything. He said probably never in the military. But if he was, he never saw anything, because said he wouldn't want to talk about it. And then we got this guy that came in, and he was a new boss. And he had been in Iraq, I believe. And I remember one day he and I were talking, and he said, "Man, that guy hasn't experienced anything." I said, "You just want to forget about it." And that it's like, anything that's traumatic, you just want to forget it. But especially when it comes to the destruction of other human life. And keeping in vain. That's really what, it's, we started off talking about the death of DEI. DEI really, that's, it really put a lot of people in a very much the same type of mindset of just, there's no opportunity. And I don't think they realized the psychological effects that they had with that.
Well, when you no longer base promotions on merit, then you're excluding or alienating a whole subset of people, and telling them there's no reason to try. There's no reason to want to succeed, because no matter how hard you try, the door is shut for you.
That's right.
And then you run into the issue of having someone who is less qualified that got the position solely based on something superficial. And then, there's a whole conclave of downsides. Do I think that everyone deserves an opportunity? Yes. But you have to prove yourself. Why are you the best fit? It's not simply because you have the right skin tone or you have the right genitalia. It's because you studied, you know it, you can perform, you do well under stress. There's a whole list of criteria that need to be met, and none of those should be based on your sexual orientation or something else that is irrelevant to the task.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think this is probably a good jumping off point this week. And it has been good to be back. And again, just trying to gather up some more guests to try to come on in the future. And just kind of scouting around and talking to some people, trying to figure out when that could be possible with some of them. But if you enjoy it, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends about it, and always leave your comments in there. Join the exchange. Be a part of it. Tell us what you think. Give us your opinions. Michael?
Well, so I apologize to our listeners. I'm having a little more difficulty talking than I used to. I have a hard time keeping my throat clear, but I'm going to power through. I want to leave you with this. Always strive to do your best. In the end, even if no one notices, you know that you did everything you could, and you'll be rewarded for such. Even if you're not rewarded here, there's someone who's always watching, who knows where your heart is. Don't ever accept defeat. Always move forward. And in those times where you've reached your limit and you cannot continue, then lean on Christ to carry you through. You should always lean on Him, but in those times where you feel the most hopeless, that's where your relationship with God can grow the strongest. Just never give up.
That's it right there. Don't ever give up. And God will see you through it. Anyway, thank you for being here. As always, love doing it. Love meeting you guys here. Join the exchange. Leave your comments, like, subscribe, and share. And we will see you back here next week.